my gosh. Oh, did the power go out? Whoa, the power went out. Oh my gosh. Guys, I'm afraid to open this door. Our house is literally being tested right now. Holy cow. Oh my God, there's so, it's, woo-wee. Oh my God. It's literally a hurricane right now. You guys can't see this because it's nighttime. It's like 11 o'clock at night, but there's wind coming through here. Wow, that's dusty. At like 60 to 70 miles an hour. I'm only rolling a camera in case for some reason our house does not survive this. This house is engineered for 100 miles an hour of sustained wind. And I'll tell you what, when you guys put the screws in the SIP panels, this is exactly why you do it. There has been non-stop lightning to the west and to the south of us for the last hour and a half. Wow. Oh, here comes the rain. The winds have already died back down. Like, they're not nearly as dead calm as it was just a few minutes ago, but they're much calmer now, and we're getting lots of rain. Apparently there was actually a weather warning for this, which we didn't see. Severe thunderstorm warning and penny-sized hail. I've never seen that, but I think if we get some, it might damage the car and the truck. So hopefully we don't get any of that. Oh my gosh. Bugaboo, come on. Come on. Come on. Come here, Bugaboo. Come on! For those of you that live in tornado or hurricane territory, this probably is all too familiar for you, but this is not normal here. For now, things are calmed down. I really don't see much lightning. Man, I feel bad for whoever's in the path of that storm because it's still going. According to the Weather Service, it's moving at 60 miles an hour. I think it's safe to go to bed now. It's almost midnight, long past our bedtime. Hope everybody made it through that storm okay and is safe. For those who have damage, I hope it's easy to fix. Wow.
I'm afraid what we're gonna find out here.
You made it through, Chuck. You made it through.
It's like nothing ever happened, like a normal day.
Just a beautiful day. You'd never know that all hell broke loose. Well, in fairness, those chairs tip over if you just look at them, so that's not considered damage, I don't think.
This was on the back of the house, wasn't it?
Oh, maybe it was. No, I think it was sitting right there.
Wow.
And the house is all still there. Oh, that Tyvek didn't survive, but...
That Tyvek was ripping so hard.
Yeah. That's just stapled on there. That's pretty good, although they are those cap staples. So the people who live in hurricane country, and probably tornadoes too, but hurricanes especially, if you break glass, the wind is able to pressurize the inside of the house. So if the house is a closed box and the wind blows against it, it's a box. But if you poke a hole in that box, it pressurizes the structure. And while the wind outside might not lift the roof off, the pressure inside can actually detach the roof. That's what I was worried about when the wind started blowing hard. Was like, if the wind outside doesn't cause a problem, but we lose a window, get in the garage. I think that's a good idea at this point. There's less glass. There's some glass, but it's a lot less. And if the roof comes off, we still have kind of a roof.
Well, the garage, I did feel safer in the garage.
It felt like a bunker, huh? It was pretty solid.
Yeah, but
the garage doors were going rattle, 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 which I don't know.
But like we were just hanging out in the garage, and aside from that, it was like relatively calm.
Well, that's kind of what happened to us the first year we were here. We were in a brick building, and a 100-mile-an-hour windstorm came through.
And you're like, huh?
And we're like, oh, did something happen? So I can kind of see how that happened to us that time. Because, I mean, if you're in the garage, you might have said, it's kind of windy outside. But when you're up in the house,
yeah.
Oh, it's windy, all right.
Oh.
I don't think we lost any trees. We were worried about this tree.
Oh.
This tree being dead.
Hold on, let me get in on that. Yeah, this tree's been victim to the woodpeckers.
I think the beetles got it.
And then the woodpeckers got it.
The woodpeckers ate the beetles. And then the fungus is eaten.
So it's funny because like 2 days prior to this, I was telling Jesse, do we need to add cutting down that tree to our to-do list? And he said, no, we won't worry about it. I mean, if a big storm's gonna come and a big windstorm, we might want to cut it down.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is this stuff just really blindsides you and you don't have time to do anything about it. Luckily, she stands.
Yep.
But gosh, can you imagine if that fell in the house?
Not
Holy
good.
cow. You know, part of me thinks it just like, bink, like bounce off like a toothpick.
Well,
it's not a huge tree. Say that to a person that's had a tree fall on them, like, well, it wasn't that big.
The good news is that the prevailing weather always comes from the southwest. And we have no trees on the southwest side of the house for the wind to blow over. So if we got a wind from the north, well, we're shielded from the north because of the hillside, so I doubt we would have damage. But anyway, the wind's blowing that way. So the good news is if the wind blows that tree over, I highly, highly, highly doubt it's gonna fall backwards onto the house. I do see tree damage though. This tree doesn't look like it did before. It looks like the top blew off of that guy.
So that right there?
Something's missing.
Yeah.
4 years ago, the top of this tree was bifurcated like this, and a half of it blew off in that windstorm. We lost another tree on another part of the property, but we ended up salvaging that piece to make a piece of the deck. But I was always worried the other half would blow off just because where the trees bifurcate, they're often very weak.
Wow.
Holy cow, I'm surprised we didn't hear that. It was actually diseased clear down through here. You can see where the bifurcation was right here.
Oh yeah, totally.
That's a pretty big
How are we gonna get it off the hillside?
A
winch?
Know. Yeah, we'll figure probably a chain and some heavy equipment of some kind or another. The good news of this is it's down, which means it can't come down now.
Right.
I think that puts me at concern for this tree though, because statistically the tree won't grow anymore because they grow through the top, right? So this tree's basically dead now.
Oh, that's a good looking tree.
Let's see what else is broken around here.
This tree right here, that's not from this windstorm. That was here when we got here. We call it the Bengal Cat Freeway because when Bugaboo's brother was alive, they would both walk up and down this. It was quite cute.
Well, so far the assessment is all very positive. Yeah, you can even tell that the wind was all coming from the other side because this Tyvek looks untouched and there's no real substantial even limbs or anything on the ground back here. I did some research on this storm just purely out of curiosity because I've never really experienced something like that before. I was actually sitting on the deck enjoying the lightning show. We get lightning here all the time, but we don't get lightning like that. This was all very, like, it was nonstop, and those type of storms probably are more common elsewhere. And we get them once in a while. But anyway, I was enjoying the light show, and it was that dead calm, that eerie, kind of humid, hot calm at 10:30 at night. That's not common here. That's more common maybe in the Midwest or the South or the East. Anyway, enjoying the show, Lissa's sleeping, and I heard what sounded like a jet go over the top of us, like, whew. And I kind of scratched my head and thought, oh, that was weird. I kind of looked up, dark. 30 seconds later, the wind ripped through our property faster than I could go from the deck to the house. It was slamming against the house. And I was like, oh boy, this is gonna get exciting. I think it would have been fun if it would have been a short storm, but in the end, we sustained winds for a little over an hour at 70 plus miles an hour. Hard to say exactly how much, but a lot of the people around us had a lot of damage. There were people here with no power for, I think 5 days was the longest that somebody was without power. I think the reason that the damage at this point is less is because we already had a 100-mile-an-hour storm, which was a record breaker, a century storm, once in 100 years, 4 years ago. So a lot of the shallow rooted trees or diseased or weak trees, a lot of that stuff already blew over. That one was horrible. No power for 2 weeks. Of course, we were off grid, so we had no clue and we weren't really affected by it too much. But because that storm had already come, a lot of that damage was kind of avoided for this storm. Something kind of weird, we've talked to a few neighbors to see kind of where they're at with their damage. A lot of people with gardens, commercial gardens and things, were concerned about the hail. We get hail like everybody else, but we don't get big hail, very, very, very rarely. And they were forecasting, I think, nickel size hail, and that'll just destroy a crop, as you guys know. Well, we don't deal with that around here. So a lot of the folks that we know who are in the gardening world were trying really hard to cover their crops, but there was no hail for us, only damaging winds. So of course everything they put on their crop to protect it from the hail ended up getting blown away and doing more damage than if they would have just left it uncovered in the first place. Looks like the garden's actually doing just fine. I don't think we had any damage in the garden at all. All the plants look like they're doing pretty good. Everything's growing up nicely. No, onions are fine. Tomatoes are looking good. Potatoes aren't gonna win any awards right now. Those are looking a little lethargic. Maybe they just need some water. Another strange thing about these storms, or this type of storm, was that the wind was actually very high. We didn't get a lot of wind on the ground, which probably explains why that chair just tipped over and didn't get blown into the next county. That wind was really maybe about 40 to 50 feet up. So it was hitting the house, most of it in the eddy form instead of direct form, but it's really high up. But for some people who around here hardly ever get wind, they had told us that they had wind on the ground just ripping. So I guess it's kind of hard to predict, but it is not uncommon to get the wind up in the treetops and then not that much wind down here on the ground. And that's exactly how this storm acted. Well, that didn't go very far. For that much wind, that's for the sawmill. There's another one we lost the top on. These trees are looking pretty good. Does this take you back or what?
Oh my gosh.
3 years ago in the spring, we were running our chainsaw mill here, milling a pine tree that we fell for decking, for our deck.
Yeah.
And we had no tools and no equipment.
And we hand rolled them down this hill.
Yep, we rolled them down here and then like winched them this direction, I think with the four-wheeler, so we had one tool. Got them to here, lifting them up onto these bucks. Anyway, we left our contraption here, you know, in case we ever needed to do it again.
So what's this tree's story?
Well,
This isn't from this storm.
No, it was definitely rotten in the butt for sure.
Man, you ever feel like we're losing all of our trees?
Yeah, we didn't have that many to start with. That's why we bought trees, partly because they're so cheap. But yeah, this one, I don't know, it blew down at some point. We never heard it. So this is a pretty good sized pine tree, although it's hard to say how much wood in there is actually usable because this butt is so rotten. You know, it's very possible that it's just not really any good wood, but I definitely want to try to get something out of it, make sure it goes to use. So how many trees are we at so far? The top
I wasn't counting.
of 2 trees and 1 blowdown. Well, we've got beetle in the area, and that's what's killing a lot of these trees. They're all pine trees. You actually have to cut them down eventually because you don't want them to get into the other trees. So that just means more stuff for the sawmill.
empty cisterns are still up here. I was wondering if those were gonna fly.
I don't think the wind really got down in here. I mean, I guess I don't really know, but...
Well, our friends were actually camping, and we were like, oh God, I hope they're okay. And they said it never even got their tents. It just kind of stayed up in the treetops,
never
so...
moved their tents at all. I don't see a lot of like branches and stuff lying around, you know what I mean?
Right, which is a good sign.
Yeah, like it's kind of weird. You'd expect to see whole branches and whatnot, and there just aren't that many laying around, so... But I think we passed. I think we made it through. I texted our engineer and I just said, just so you know, your engineering worked. You don't really care about your engineer until your house is getting pounded with wind. So all the posts on this deck were from the other half of the top of that tree that blew down. Feels really good. I don't know, I like it. That's why I think we should try to integrate some portion of that tree in some fashion in the house, because, well, that's the first time our house that we built got hit with some serious wind. So every time we see that wood, it'll just be a reminder of the first time we survived a good windstorm. And I think that's true of this deck too. When we come up here, I don't know, it'll always be a very sentimental place, even if it's not gonna win any design awards or anything like that. We made it from stuff we have here. In case you haven't been following us for a while, I guess we had kind of always assumed that people watching our videos have been with us since the very beginning, and I guess everybody had to find our channel at some point, so maybe that day is for you today. So we've been building this house for 2 years, and we did have it engineered, but we've been doing all the construction on it. And so now that you're up to speed, the people who've been following us for a while are probably thinking, why would you be worried about the house? You built it. And I think there's a few really key things about the house, the design, and kind of where we're at in the building process that, I don't know, just gives you a moment for pause when everything's being tested. These panels that make up our walls are called SIPs, or structural insulated panels. And the specification from the manufacturer right here where these two panels meet is to use a staple. There's actually a piece of OSB behind here that's about 4 inches, so it spans 2 inches on either side. You can see the screws are staggered. That actually is specified as a staple. Can you believe that? A staple. And in talking with our engineer who has works with this material on a fairly regular basis, they said, well, we won't say that staples are not a good idea, but we would say screws are better. And because of that, we decided to use screws for the house, and we went through a ridiculous amount of screws. When we were constructing the SIP panels, we would regularly see comments on social media and YouTube and stuff like, "Ma, you got enough screws in your house? Oh boy, you need another screw?" Or how do you survive with all those screws? Anyway, lots of criticism for the amount of screws. And my thought whenever people were saying those things always was, when it's calm outside and it's warm, you're not wondering whether you put enough screws in your house. But when the wind is whipping and bashing and assaulting your house, I don't think you really want to be that guy sitting on the sofa wondering if the staples are doing their job or not. And we're just not those kind of people. If there's something we could do that's maybe just a little bit more cost and a little bit more effort that would make the structure a little bit more sound, we're totally going to do it. And yes, we put in an insane amount of screws. These shiny washers that you see right here are actually really long lag screws, and what they do is they go all the way through the structural panel. The structural panel is actually 8 inches deep. They go all the way through that, and then they actually penetrate in this row here the rim, or the rim board, which is fastened to the sill plate, which is bolted to the foundation. Those screws are what effectively connect this envelope, or these structural panels. They connect that to the foundation. And we have a timber frame inside, and that is what connects the timber frame to the structural panels to the foundation. There's 2 reasons that's super important when you have a storm. One, we haven't put all of those screws in there yet. Some folks might not know that. We decided, after having put quite a number of them in, that we would leave some of them out strategically so that we could slide sheetrock behind the timber frame. Otherwise, the screws will block that space. That was a very bold move, given what I know now, because not all of these screws are in place, which means we're under fastened, if you will. The other reason that's super important is that clear up here on the roof, those are the same way that those panels attach to the rafters on the inside. Why that's important is when the panels arrived, the screws that were provided to us by the SIP company, which is where we purchased them, were 13-inch screws. We had 12.25-inch thick SIP panels and SIPs, sorry guys, and we put a 1/2 inch of sheetrock on there, which left us 1/4 inch of penetration. That's not going to make it, right? 1/4 inch. We ended up using those screws to attach some of the panels temporarily, and then we had the SIP company overnight longer screws, the correct screws for this application, and we went back and removed all of the shorter screws and put the longer screws in. Of course, we probably could have got away with some of those screws because it wasn't all of them. It wasn't every single screw was 13-inch. There was some 14s and some 13s, etc. We probably could have mixed and matched or done something, but I think in the end we were super happy that we took the time and labor to remove the short screws and put the correct, really long screws so that they bite hard into the rafters and our roof stays on. Another factor during the wind that had me a little bit concerned is these 4-foot overhangs. The 4-foot overhang, there's a lot of reasons behind it, but one of the main reasons is uplift. Not so much because of snow load. If you've been watching our channel, you know that we're probably never going to get any snow load to amount to anything because our roof is so steep and it's metal. But the 4-foot overhang will start to bite you in the butt when it comes to wind because it just acts like a kite. And I was under the impression that these timber brackets, which look somewhat ornamental, in fact, are there to resist uplift, not so much to bear the load, but to prevent the roof from flying away by transferring that load to the wall. These timber brackets are not actually fastened to the roof yet. We haven't actually anchored them yet because we have cladding that needs to go underneath here. And until that cladding's on, we can't really anchor them. Therefore, at this point, they are basically ornamental and they're not helping to resist that uplift. So because of that, I was a little bit concerned that this 4-foot eave might be an issue. If you look closely, you'll see all those silver washers. This is the prevailing weather side, and we decided that there's no chance we can leave those washers or those screws out on the prevailing weather side. I think that was a good decision. One other comment I wanted to make. When we were researching the roofing that we wanted to use, a standing seam metal roof, we came upon 2 details. One is an exposed fastener detail, and one is a hidden fastener detail. And in our area, the exposed fastener detail is the standard or default detail. So much so that the company we purchased our metal from said that they would not honor their warranty for the metal because they were concerned that the metal would fatigue and would become subject to uplift. Of course, the metal's only been on there for not even a year yet. So at this point, it's highly unlikely that the metal has fatigued. But because we chose to use kind of a hybrid between exposed and hidden fastener, we actually had to give up the warranty on the roof. It was something that we were willing to do because we simply did not want exposed fasteners on the eave of the roof. So the eave of the roof is actually a hemmed detail, and the metal is physically bent over. Of course, we trust the design because it's used all over the country in other areas and even in hurricane areas, so it's not like this is something that we're test pilots on. But I'm happy to report that this has been trustworthy. We got hit with some really good wind and we had no damage. In fact, there's no signs of fatigue at all from the metal. I wasn't really worried about it, I guess, not really, but I think it's worth mentioning. If you're gonna build a house and you're gonna run into things like this, give it some thought. The company may not be confident, even though that same company offers the warranty on hidden fastener details on the East Coast. In this area, they won't honor that warranty. So how does it feel knowing that we built this house and that we put a ridiculous amount of screws in it.
I think at the time it was a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
I was like, do we really need screws every 30 inches? And when a storm like this happens, you're not sad at all. So we're not building this house to withstand the day-to-day. It's to withstand like 100 years. I don't know. Like as long as it could stand.
Yep.
And all the things that are gonna happen to it during that time.
And that's all you can do. I mean, you build, like engineering is the happy medium between spending way too much time and money and it falling down. And so somewhere in there, like being strong enough but being cost efficient and buildable is good. And I think we've achieved that. I think it feels good, guys, to be living in this house and to get nailed by a pretty good storm. I mean, we can't really call up an order like a Category 3 hurricane just to give this thing a run for its money. So you kind of have to wait. Like we said a few years ago, we had what, 4 feet of snow or 3 feet of snow in a week or 3 days, and a bunch of, are you ready for this, engineered buildings fell down. And a bunch of not engineered buildings did just fine. But they were using the, like, if it fell down,
build it stronger.
Build it again, stronger engineering method, and it worked. To surviving many more storms in our home.
Yep. I remember years ago talking about just one day we're gonna be sitting in our dried-in house just watching the rainfall.
Yep.
Watching the lightning, and we're good. And it took, you know, I guess 4 years living on this property for it to happen, but
it took a long time. Mark our words, guys. There will come a point in time where right here, where my feet are, there will be a sofa.
Oh yeah.
And we will sit on the sofa and watch the
lightning.
storms. For now, we're still working on the house.